What is Neighbourhood Unit Plan? The Neighbourhood Unit Plan is the effort to create a residential neighbourhood to meet the needs of family life in a unit related to the larger whole but possessing a distinct entity characterized by 6 factors. Number 1, a child need not cross traffic street on the way to school. Number 2 is a centrally located elementary school which will be within easy walking distance, no more than 1.5 miles from the father's dwelling. Number 3 is a housewife can walk to shopping center to obtain daily household gifts. Number 4 is convenient transportation to and from the workplace. Number 5, scattered neighborhood parks and playgrounds to comprise about 10% of the whole area. Number 6, a residential environment with harmonious architecture, careful planting, centrally located community buildings, and special internal street system with deflections of all through traffic previously on thoroughfares with bound and clearly set off neighborhoods. The neighborhood concept is arguably one of the major planning landmarks that shaped the urban form of the 20th century city in many countries. Coincidentally, both the neighborhood idea of Clarence Stein and Henry Wright, exemplified in their plan for Redburn, and the neighborhood unit idea of Clarence Ferry were published in 1929. The urban design principle of Stein and Wright included the idea of a superblock of residential units grouped around a center green, the separation of vehicles and pedestrians, and a road hierarchy with cul-de-sacs for local access roads. A cluster of superblocks was to form a self-contained neighborhood. A group of neighborhoods would then comprise the city. For Perry, the physical arrangement of the elementary school, small parks and playgrounds, and local shops was the basis of his neighborhood idea. Each neighborhood was to be a unit of the city. The design of the Redburn neighborhood model was in essence a hierarchical one comprising 4 levels. The first one is enclave, the second one is block, the third one is super block, and the last one is neighborhood. When we talk about enclave, the first one we must know is about the fundamental component was an enclave of 20 or so houses. Secondly, these houses were arrayed in a U formation about a short vehicle street called a lane, really a cul-de-sac court with access to individual garage. The third one is while the back of each house faced this court, the front of the house had a garden. The second one is block. The important thing we must know is 3 or more of these enclaves were lined together to form a block. Enclaves within the block were separated from one another by a pedestrian pathway that ran between the front gardens of all the houses. The second one is the blocks, usually 4 in number, were arranged around the sides of a central parkway in such a manner so as to enclose the open green space. Next is superblock. The thing that we must know about superblock. The cluster 5 blocks together with the central parkway comprise what Stein and Wright term a superblock. The last one is about neighborhood. There are 4 to 6 blocks commonly form a neighborhood that was bounded by major roads or natural features. At one end of the parkway there could be a small school with community rooms. Roads in the neighborhood were to be hierarchical. Major through traffic roads to border each neighborhood, distributed roads to surround each superblock, and cul-de-sacs to provide access to individual property lots. In other hands, Stein emphasized that the prime goal was to design a town for the automobile age. Although Stein and Wright considered neighborhoods as each being relatively self-contained, they arranged them in an overlapping manner to support a joint use of facilities such as hospitals, high schools, and theaters. They visualized the neighborhood as forming the building block of the city, whereas previously the lot and the city were the basis for town design. For the last part is, to their minds, there should be a three-level hierarchy consisting of neighborhoods, town, and region. The second one is, they believe the future urban development should be based on the regional city, a constellation of smaller sized towns tied together by a parkway or open highway. Perry identified 6 neighborhood unit design principles. First, the unit was to be ideally shaped with all sides were fairly equidistant from the center, and its size was to be fixed. Secondly, a central neighborhood-owned community center was to contain various institutional sites, including a school, group round, a central green space. Thirdly, local shops and apartments were to be located at the outer corners of the neighborhoods. Fourthly, scattered small parks and open spaces located in each quadrant of neighborhoods were to form 10% of the total area. Fifthly, auxiliary streets were to bound each side of the neighborhood while sixthly, the layout of the internal street was to be a combination of curvilinear and diagonal roads to discourage through traffic. Vehicles and pedestrian traffic was to be segregated. Paris' concept of the neighborhood was as a relatively self-contained building block of the city, hence the additions of the word unit to his concept. He identified 4 urban locations where the idea could be applied: new sites in the suburbs, vacant sites in the central area, predominantly apartment districts, and central areas that had suffered deteriorations and require rebuilding. He later recognized that land assemblage in the existing built-up areas of cities to create neighborhoods was impractical and suggested a modified process of eminent domain, government right to take private land for public benefit with just compensations through the process of condemnations be applied in the assemblage of neighborhood unit sites. Now, we are going to comparison of design principles. Number 1, Stein and Wright, along with Perry, agreed that the neighborhood was to have a limited or fixed size determined by the population needed to support an elementary school. Number 2, other similarities between their two models were defining the neighborhood by 6 means of boundaries, the inclusion of a significant amount of open space, a neighborhood center that would include the school, and a road system that was safe for pedestrians and did not allow through traffic. Number 3, a critical distinction between the Redburn model of Stein and Wright and Paris' idea was the kind of neighborhood boundary it envisaged. Although Perry as well as Stein and Wright used arterial streets to form the neighborhood's boundary, Stein and Wright preferred the use of natural forms where possible. Another difference between the two models was the maximum walking distance proposed, 0.8 km in the Redburn neighborhood and 0.4 km in the neighborhood unit model. Further distinctions were the superblock with its central green, the separation of streets and pedestrian paths, and the road hierarchy of the Redburn model. Another difference was that Perry envisaged the neighborhood as a separate urban unit. When a number of units were amalgamated, they would form the city. Stein and Wright, on the other hand, conceived the Redburn neighborhoods as overlapping one another and grouped into districts to support large-scale facilities. Now we are going to neighborhood unit principles. Number 1 is size. A residential unit development should provide housing for the populations for which one elementary school is ordinarily required, its actual area depending upon population density. Secondly is boundaries. The unit should be bounded on all sides by arterial streets sufficiently wide to facilitate its bypassing by all through traffic. Thirdly is open spaces. A system of small parks and recreation space should be provided, planned to meet the needs of the particular neighborhood. Fourthly is institution sites. Sites for the school and other institutions having service spheres coinciding with the limits of the unit should be suitably grouped about a central point or common area. Sixthly is about internal street system. The unit should be provided with a special street system, each highway being proportions to its probable traffic load, and the street net as a whole being designed to facilitate circulation within the unit and to discourage its use by through traffic. To offer a clear picture of each of these principles, the figures illustrate plans and diagrams in which the principles have been applied. Lastly is local shops. One or more shopping districts adequate for the population to be served should be laid out in the circumference of the unit, preferably at the traffic junctions and adjacent to similar districts of adjoining neighborhoods. Now, we are going to examples, which is low-cost suburban development. When we discuss about these types of development, the criteria need to be considered. Number 1, characters of district. Number 2 is populations and housing. Number 3 is open space. Number 4 is community center. Number 5 is shopping district. And the last one is street system. When we discuss about community center, the pivotal features of the layout is the commons with the group of buildings that face upon it. This consists of the schoolhouse and two lateral structures facing a small central plaza. One of these buildings might be devoted to a public library and the other to any suitable neighborhood purpose. Sites are provided for two churches, one adjoining the school playground and the other at a prominent street intersection. Next is shopping district. Small shopping districts are located at each of the four corners of the development. The streets furnishing access to the stores are widened to provide for parking. And at the two more important points, there are small market squares, which affords additional parking space and more opportunity for unloading space in the rear of the stores. The total area devoted to business blocks and market plazas amount to 7.7 acres. Next is street system. In carrying out the unit principle, the boundary streets have been made sufficiently wide to serve as main traffic arteries. One of the bounding streets is 160 feet wide and the other three have width of 120 feet. Each of these arterial highways is provided with a central roadway for through traffic and two service roadways for local traffic separated by planting strips. Next is open space. The parks, playgrounds, small greens and circles in the tract total 17 acres or 10.6% of the total area. Last but not least, we are planners must concern about the types of development. It is because we are plan for society and we are planners must concern about sustainable elements such as social, economy, and environment.